Educational for February 15, 2026. In international news, the Trump regime has imposed an oil blockade on Cuba. Mexico, Brazil, and other countries have vowed to fight this illegal and immoral action. In Europe, the Communist Party of Poland was declared illegal, though the party has vowed to fight on, as the decree was issued by a court with no legality. In the Middle East, Iran battles protests that have ties to foreign intelligence, and the Olympics is in the news with scandals in curling. The educational today comes from Chapter 2 of Historical Materialism by Maurice Cornforth, Materialism and the Science of Society. The first guiding principle of historical materialism is that change and development in society, as in nature, takes place in accordance with objective laws. What happens in society is brought about by the conscious activities of human individuals, but the outcome of this activity and the conscious motives by which it is directive are, in the last analysis, conditioned by the operation of laws of economic development, which operate independently of the will of men. Marx's discovery of the laws of social development arms the working class movement with the scientific knowledge with the aid of which it can carry its struggle against capitalism through to the victory of socialism, and then build socialist society. The Marxist concept of social laws is not fatalistic, but shows how people by their own efforts can and do change society. Nor does it deny the role of individual leaders, but shows that such leaders always represent and serve the interests of classes. The general theory of the motive forces and laws of social change, developed on the basis of Marx's discoveries, is known as the materialist conception of history, or historical materialism. The materialist conception of history was arrived at by applying the materialist world outlook to the solution of social problems. And because he made this application, materialism was, with Marx, no longer simply a theory aimed at interpreting the world, but a guide to the practice of changing the world, of building a society without exploitation of man by man. Above all, historical materialism has a contemporary significance. It is always applicable here and now, at the present day. It leads to conclusions, not only about the causes of past events, but about the causes of events now taking place, and therefore about what to do, about the policy to fight for, in order to satisfy the requirements of the people. The application of the materialist world outlook to social questions leads to three guiding principles, which historical materialism employs in the understanding of social issues. They are: 1. That society and its development is regulated by objective laws discoverable by science. 2. That views and institutions, political, ideological, and cultural developments arise on the basis of the development of the material life of society. 3. That ideas and institutions, which thus arise on the basis of conditions of material life, play an active role in the development of material life. The first guiding principle resulting from the application of materialism to social questions is that change and development in society, as in nature, take place in accordance with objective laws. Social processes, like processes in nature, are regulated by objective laws. Materialism maintains that the processes of nature always take place in accordance with laws which are discoverable and are characteristic of the processes and objects concerned. Materialism explains what takes place in the material world from the material world itself. It does not recognize inexplicable happenings, divine interventions, or control of material events by non-material, supernatural agencies. Consequently, for materialism, social life, the history of society, ceases to be an agglomeration of accidents and becomes the history of the development of society according to regular laws, and the study of the history of society becomes a science. Hence, the science of the history of society, despite all the complexity of the phenomena of social life, can become as precise a science as, let us say, biology, and capable of making use of the laws of development of society for practical purposes. What in this context do we mean by laws? What exactly is the materialist conception of laws, whether it be laws of natural or of social processes? Laws are expressions, usually only approximate, of objective regularities discoverable in events. A law, such as the law of gravity, is a rule which has been formulated to express certain regular connections between phenomena, that is, regular connections between observed events, between observed features of things and processes. These connections and regularities, which are expressed in the law, do not depend on ourselves. We can get to know them and express them in laws, and then we can take these laws into account in our practical activity. But the laws, insofar as they are objective and scientifically valid, express objective connections and regularities which operate independently of our consciousness and our will. For example, the mutual attraction between bodies, which is expressed in the law of gravity, operates independently of our consciousness and of our will. It operates just the same, whether we observe it or not, and whether we like it or not. We have to adapt our actions to the law of gravity, since we cannot, by any possibility, alter it. And if social processes are regulated by laws, then the same must apply in society. There are regularities in social processes and connections between social events, which are independent of our consciousness and will. Whether we notice them or not, whether we like them or not, they operate just the same. If such regularities and connections exist in nature and society, they exist because events do not take place, whether in nature or society, without a cause, and because causes, once being set in motion, their effects must follow. If, for example, certain events took place without causes, or if there were supernatural intervention in the course of events, or if similar causes failed to produce similar effects, then we could not say that events were regulated by laws, for in that case, the regularity and connection which is expressed in laws would not be present. If, then, we say that society develops according to objective laws, then we must mean 1. That social events take place only when the conditions causing such events have come into being. If, say, a movement starts up in which people put new social objectives before themselves, then that moment arises when and only when the conditions for it exist. It occurs at a definite time and in definite circumstances, and could not have occurred at any other time and in any other circumstances when its causes were not present. So, for example, if we are considering the rise of Christianity in the Roman Empire, we ought to seek for its causes in the conditions which had developed in Roman society at that particular time. And similarly, if we are considering the rise of rationalism and free-thinking in modern Europe, once again, we should seek its causes in the particular conditions of society which were coming into being in modern Europe. Neither, in the one case, nor the other, should we seek for the explanation of the movement in some special illumination of men's minds taking place independently of the general movement of society. We mean, too, that once certain events have taken place, their effects will follow, independently of people's desires or intentions. Subsequent actions, subsequent events, may modify these effects, but cannot nullify them. For example, the invention of the mariner's compass set in motion a whole train of effects which went far beyond what anyone had intended or foreseen. So did the invention of the steam engine, the invention of the spinning jenny, and so on. Once such a train of effects is set in motion, it gives a direction to social events which cannot be reversed. It is the same in the political and ideological sphere. Men's political and ideological activities, coming to pass as a products of definite social circumstances, lead to effects in accordance with those circumstances, which may go far beyond and even be very different from what they foresaw or intended. And we mean 3, that circumstances are continually changing, and exactly the same circumstances never recur. Nevertheless, the same causal connections are discoverable in different sequences of events. Thus, the great social movements arising at different periods of history exemplify the same causal connections operating in different circumstances. If, for example, 300 years ago there was a movement to get rid of feudalism, and today there is a movement to get rid of capitalism, these movements, different as they are, repeat the same process. They both arise because an existing social system has become a fetter and a deadweight upon economic development. But it is one thing to say that social processes are regulated by laws and therefore a science of society is possible. It is another thing to discover these laws, to lay bare the fundamental laws of change and development in society. How then, for your consideration, does Marxism approach this problem?